I am happy to welcome everybody to the Aquillius Innovation Hub. And after traveling the world, helping government, industry, and academia bring people and technology together to solve critical problems, the thing that attracted me most to Aquillius was the vision. So if you see Mi Fong and Leah and Ray and Amit and Ron and Don and everybody else, they're really passionate about building the idea of community. So a community where everybody comes together to help turn ideas into innovative life science solutions. And life science is what keeps us healthy. It's what keeps us growing. It's one of the most important things we have. So in this community, so they built a place that's basically set for people just to connect. So the people sitting next to you are investors and experts and researchers and scientists and business people, banking people. Those are the people that are all here. This is also a place to concentrate and get stuff done. This includes all the lab work, things like that, and includes places just to relax. So building lounges upstairs, patios out there, our break rooms, so all those things are there. And so one of the most important things is really to connect with that community here. That's why we have plenty of networking opportunities. So I encourage you to take advantage of those. And we're really here to talk about one part of life science, which is the food part, because we need that only now, but being able to handle that in the future, whether it's shocks through economy or politics or light or pandemics. And so really we're talking about how sustainable agriculture can create jobs and keep jobs and create food and give us food security, job security, economic security. Okay, so that's what today's about. Everybody's checked in. Our first speaker will be Carlos, who should be on the line and ready to go. We'll be talking to Dr. Amit Vasavada, who's here, and then Dr. Craig Kolodge will be here. Taking a break, startup showcase, and then happy hour and lots of networking. Because we're creating a community, the power of, there's a lot of great people here, but the power isn't here, it's community. So we're gonna ask for your help, give you a survey you can fill out, but really open any ideas that you have on how to do communities bigger, better, stronger, more effectively. And in fact, Amit is in the back. You wave. Feel free to talk to Amit and Ron about any ideas you have. They'll be glad to give you a tour and get your feedback on how companies can do better. If you have an event you'd like to hold here, an event you'd like us to hold here, those are the kind of ideas we want, and those are some people that can give you good takes on that, and they love to get your feedback on how to make this place, and really just how to make the community better inside out here. So anything we can do for you, those are great resources to do that. So our first speaker, I'm just going over the speakers real quickly, just to tell you who they are, what they're talking about, then I'll introduce them with a little more detail. So Dr. Carlos Gaitan, Benchmark Labs, he's going to talk about food security and labor through AI applications. So AI is taking over your farm, and we're going to tell you how that is. We also have Dr. Amit Vasavada. He's talking about how do you fight fire with fire? How do you stop pest with the same kind of technology? So smart biological pesticides. And then we have Dr. Kolodge, who's going to talk about really soils, but also economic streams. If you want to be sustainable, you have to have lots of ways to keep as the economy changes, the soil changes. So you're talking about putting that all together. So we're talking about running the farm in general, keeping that farm safe from pesticide, and going from the ground up through soils and making that work proper. And he's gonna be talking about a prescription for creating a healthy agricultural hub in San Diego. Then we will be talking to some great companies, and they'll all get a chance to pitch. Wild Genomics, Rare Flora, Chloroboost, Valortrac, and Page Technologies will all be here to do that. Thanks to our partners, Aquillius Ventures, Start Out, and OutBio. And if you want to go ahead and take that QR code, there'll be a survey there. So you're welcome to take that. And with that, we'll bring on Dr. Carlos Gaitan, who actually knows a lot about weather and technology and AI. So it's about how do you take all those external things to do with your farm, including the labor. So with that, Carlos Gaitan from Benchmark Labs.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Hi, everyone.
Yeah, we hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the invitation. So honored to be here speaking with you about how we can improve labor and food security with the help of AI. So as mentioned by Eirik, I'm Dr. Carlos Gaitan. My background is in atmospheric sciences, and I have always been passionate about how weather and water control many decisions at the farm level. I will start by saying that weather affects all of us, but especially high-value land managers. From maybe speaking here to the choir, but from frost and pest prevention, some of our other panelists are going to talk about pests, water and the energy nexus, labor, wildfires, safety, compliance, insurance. All of those ones are by themselves multi-billion-dollar opportunities, and they all affect farmers one way or the other. So we are talking about a very large TAM. Actually, last week, Khosla Ventures actually quantified that the TAM of weather services could be around 100 billion, which is a pretty big figure. So the situation here is that unfortunately, the National Weather Service all over the world have been using the same kind of technology since the Normandy, where they divide the world in boxes, and everybody inside of a box receives exactly the same forecast. So these divisions are totally arbitrary, depending on the size of the box. They don't follow rivers, they don't follow mountains, they don't follow coasts. And because of that, there are lots of microclimates that cannot be addressed effectively if they happen at the subgrid level. So that generalization, unfortunately, causes significant financial losses for land managers. And we're talking about, of course, today about agriculture, but also if you think about a wind turbine operator, a solar farm, a ski resort, a mining operation, they all are affected by microclimates. However, they're receiving data and forecasts that are general for a big region, almost at the county level, not at the location that they care. For example, here in the right-hand side, we have a location of the El Duero region in Portugal, famous for its wines. And you can see changes in elevation, land cover, water availability, all leading to different management practices. However, they are all in the same grid of the European Center or the US forecast. So there are significant loss the irrigate or under irrigate, for example. So what we do at Labs is we provide like a location-specific point forecasting technology that uses the information from these imperfect weather models that are valuable and very useful for different applications. And then we refine them using IoT sensors at the farm level, at the asset level. We are not a hardware company. I had learned my lessons before. I used to work in a hardware company. So, it's, as they say, hardware is hard, capital intensive, and has thin margins. What we do is we partner, we leverage existing hardware. We work with existing hardware manufacturers to provide that IoT instrumentation at the farm level. We use it as ground truth, then use our proprietary machine learning technology to refine the information from NOAA, from different organizations and public that provide gridded weather data and provide better forecast recommendations and alerts tailored to each specific location. This technology allows us to reduce the forecasting errors up to 85%, In many cases, for the case of relative humidity, temperatures around 70%, wind speeds around 50%, error reduction, and all of those ones are, for example, very important if you have to do day-to-day operations. So, as mentioned before, all of these improvements in accuracy at the farm level, at the location level, almost at the field level, lead to improved labor management, water management, better safety for compliance and regulations with OSHA, for example, as some of you might be aware now we have more regulations, more restrictions on what type of labor can be done. We are entering summer, the first heat waves are happening, but now there are very hard restrictions on the exposure that labor could have under inclement weather. And of course, that leads to better yield in agriculture or load forecasting in energy. This is a very interesting visualization that I wanted to show with you or share with you about improve labor scheduling and vegetation management that we created in close collaboration with the Forest Service and with the Nature Conservancy. Here in this fire weather view, for example, it was created to manage vegetation, but also to tell them when they can perform a control burn to prevent catastrophic forest fires. The same or a very similar index was used for or is used by our farmers, our users here in Imperial Valley, where they need to understand when to irrigate. So here, for example, at the bottom, you can see in a very simple color-coded combination yellow, orange, and green, with green being the days of the week where you actually can perform vegetation management or a control burn. We have similar visualizations for our users in agriculture, telling them when they can use pesticides, fertilizers. We have water balance, including evapotranspiration that was funded by the California Energy Commission. We provide in situ evapotranspiration to help with water management and save, uh, hundreds of thousands of acres feet of water per year to our users. In terms of performance, this is some customers allowed us to share this information with you, but I wanted to share some of the farms in Minnesota, Nebraska, in terms of how the temperature and relative humidity forecast allow them to improve versus what they were getting from the National Weather Service. So the current forecast from the National Weather Services are marked in purple lines in all of those 4 charts. And in red charts are the benchmark labs forecast up to 15 days. This is data that has been compiled over a whole growing season. And it shows that our errors, even at the 15-day scale, that is at the end of this bottom axis, 168 hours into the future, is still lower than the day ahead error that they were receiving for their preserves and for their farms. That allowed them the significant error reduction allowed them to reduce the false positives in terms of scheduling labor by more than 50%. And in this particular case, they were doing vegetation management. They were concerned and they need to ask for permits to do control burns that involve having helicopters, aircrafts with water suppression capabilities ready, and lots of permits. So these also allow them to be more effective in terms of the permits, reduce the idle time of those helicopters, and schedule activities much better and safer. So, in a nutshell, we have also great traction to share with you guys here. We serve wineries in California, Europe. We signed our first winery last year. In Catalonia, we had worked with big organizations like the Nature Conservancy. And in our pipeline, we are very excited to mention that we focus on helping land managers, like high-value asset managers, and not necessarily individual farmers. We are a business-to-business company to a certain degree, so we do not go knocking at each individual winery. We work with farm managers that have many wineries under management or big organizations that control many fields. We have strategic partnerships with leading hardware manufacturers in the ag space, in the energy space, weather stations that are from $300 of $20,000. We serve them all. We are an Android-like solution. We like to play well with all the existing hardware providers. We don't want that to be a limitation for the farmers in order to receive our analytics. And we had also had great traction with investors, thanks to our investors of NextView, Beyond the Bounds, Snow Spruce, Refashioned, and prestigious accelerators like Techstars also want to give a notch to the National Science Foundation and the California Energy Commission, because with their grants, they risked our product. We have fantastic testimonials. Again, this is an ABC News. Farm managers here in California mentioning that our technology not only allowed them to reduce water consumption up to 10%, but because they were managing more effectively their land, and we're talking about pesticides, fertilizer, water management, stressing the plant the right amount, they saw gains even from 50 to 100% in terms of the previous yields when they were not using any solution to manage their crops. We also have a testimonial here from Mike Betts from Aggarwal, recently purchased by Semius, a Canadian company. They have 2 million sensors in the West Coast. And Mike, as VP of Partnerships, highlights that one of our biggest moats is not only, of course, our increased accuracy and how we can help the farmers with the opportunity cost of getting better weather data, but also because we are, again, like an Android-like solution, it makes possible to integrate many hardware manufacturers, and for Aggarwal to only maintain one API instead of having 10 bespoke integrations or 15 bespoke integrations. That also makes easier for the end customer to get data, so they don't have to jump and see soil moisture from manufacturer A in one app, a weather station manufacturer B in another app, and leaf wetness from manufacturer C in another app. We can see everything in one API, and that is very convenient as it saves headaches and management stress to our farm managers. The competitive landscape of where we are, so you have an idea of where we sit in terms of like the value proposition. Our closest analog is an Australian company called The Yield, focusing in wineries in the Maritime continent. However, they are also a management company. They install their sensors, they receive investment from Bosch, and they are managing they install them and maintain their crops. We are totally a software company. We believe that farm managers are the best suited persons to keep doing that job that they trained for, and we are an analytical ledger that gives them the opportunity to decrease costs. So our incentives are very aligned with farm managers. They are paid to reduce inputs and maximize outputs, and that's exactly what we help them to achieve. Several companies like DTN, that is a household name in agriculture, they do not provide the level of specificity that we can. They are specializing more in row crops and even in energy more than specialty crops. That is our sweet spot. The weather company provides global forecasts, but grid forecasts, but more at the API level, is not tailoring their services to agriculture. And similar to incumbents like Dark Sky that was purchased by Apple, now only serving Apple customers. MeteoBlue, the National Weather Service, and AccuWeather, some of them receive forecasts from or receive information from traditional weather stations, from citizen scientists, but they cannot produce forecast at the citizen scientist location. And that's how we are very different. Why now? And this is exciting in this conversation, is why I believe that our technology is fantastic to keep helping farmers all over the world, is because now connectivity is not a problem. We have weather stations that connect via Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, LoRaWAN, satellite, 5G, 3G. Climate risks are increasing, as you are aware. The emergence of AI allows us now to create tailored and asset-specific models instead of having one model that is kind of vanilla-like that serves most of the cases. Now we can tailor models to each specific farm. And we have a great team, of course, that is passionate about solving this problem of water availability, farm labor, food security, with great experience. This is our team. I wanted to say thank you to everybody, and this is in honor of our co-founder too, Chris Lund, the former NASA scientist that passed away during COVID. So every forecast that we do is also to honor his memory, and I'm very thankful for all the contributions that he did to the company. So I will leave it here. I think that's my 20-minute limit. Thank you so much.
Open for questions. I'd like anybody to get ready with a question. I'll ask the first one to get us started, but we will definitely make sure that you get a mic to ask your questions. So obviously, where we live, the weather is different from Vista and San Marcos, Escondido. I see that all the time. It can be foggy and even rainy. I go next door and it's sunny, and so that's critical. But as the environment continues to become more and more variable, do you have a specific case of the variability affected and what your technology has done for that particular customer?
Yes, of course. So you nail it. There are like so many microclimates where the difference is substantial. For example, we have a winery in Oregon that has two weather stations separated less than 3 acres, but they are in opposite sides of the mountain. So they have to be managed completely different. One receives more shade, one receives more wind, and one receives more water. So before, they were using kind of very similar schedules in terms of pests and pesticides, fertilizers, labor. And because one is way more exposed to powdery mildew than the other, after looking at our information, they have been able to reduce one spraying interval over the whole year, and that is very expensive. So they are very happy, even that we only in the side of pest and disease management we help them to save one spraying, which is great. And of course, the most important part for wineries as you go up in California, Oregon, British Columbia, is frost, and getting personalized or like location specific alerts for frost is very important for them, because they can lose a crop if it's a young vine in 1 hour, if it's established vine in 3 hours. So giving alerts of it's fundamental for them, and they can manage them differently. For example, they can open sprinklers so the frost attacks the water and then the berry. Other farmers go with torches, drive around, or use big cans with diesel to burn it and warm the area. So that's a typical examples of how we can, or we have been helping our farmers to manage different fields in their farm based on their microclimates.
If you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll make sure you have a mic. Those that don't know, I have a secret past as a weather forecaster, and I went to a place to forecast weather. I wonder why we're having such a problem. It's on a ship, and when I went to go visit them, I looked at the bow of the ship, and one flag was moving one way, just flapping like crazy. And I turned and looked at the back of the ship, and the flag was flapping like crazy the other way. So weather forecasting can be really difficult. Any other questions? Yep.
Yes, Carlos, I'm interested knowing whether you're working with anybody locally here in San Diego County that's working with this technology, or if not San Diego, somewhere in Southern California.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, we love to keep expanding our Southern California distribution here. We started working with farm managers near Coachella, Yuma, Imperial, Valleys, Avocados. We have some users in hemp. I would love to get farmers near San Diego County or even Temecula. If somebody is interested, I would love to bring this technology to our county and keep helping them. I'm looking forward, for example, we are launching a powdery mildew index for wineries in the next 2 months. I would love to get local wineries involved so we can work on visualization, alerts, and a way that we can help them. So yes, we keep expanding. Farm managers in general working in specialty crops. That would be fantastic to help them here in Southern California. So if you know somebody, please send them our way, and I'm here to help farmers. It's very hard what we are doing, and I have the utmost respect for them. So
Yeah, if you have another question, raise your hand. But I have a quick one. Where are you located, and can people come visit you and see what you do?
yeah, North County. We have offices at UTC, courtesy of the Blue Tech Incubator near the Westfield UTC Mall. So send me a note, and I'll be happy to have a coffee with you.
It's interesting. I helped start the Blue Tech Incubator, so that's good.
Oh, nice.
Hi, Carlos. I noticed in one of your slides you had looks like a photo of a wind farm, and I guess can you elaborate on what you think your application to that case is? I guess if it's anything beyond what I like the obvious, like wind speed or something.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's very interesting. So last year, actually, the Offshore Wind Innovation Hub in New York selected us. It was vetted by British Petroleum and Equinor because they understood that our microclimate forecasting technology transcended agriculture. So if you are, as we call it, like, high value land manager, it could be a wind farm or it could be an offshore wind farm. For wind, the value, of course, is that because we provide the forecast at the asset level where the sensor is located, we actually can provide the forecast at the turbine height. Typical forecasts go at meters, 10 meters, or at different measurements, but not necessarily at the turbine height. And as you see in this picture, those 6 turbines are all located at different heights. So relative to where they are standing, not, but relative to sea level, yes. So that is very important because then they can translate wind into generation as they have the power curves of each individual turbines. The other use cases are operations and maintenance. Operations and maintenance in offshore wind usually account for 20 to 30% of the total cost of the project. And weather is a huge component, especially if they have to go from a port, take a vessel, and do operations. So they need to get the right weather window in order to send labor effectively. So yes, so wind, of course, wind speed, wind generation, trading, that's a potential future, but we're focusing now in agriculture, as we know that relationships in energy take time to materialize. But we are aware of the potential of offshore wind in particular.
Hello, Carlos. Thanks for your presentation. I have 2 questions. One's a simple marketing question. What's with Benchmark Labs? doesn't speak much to agriculture or what you're doing. So I'm just curious about that. And the second, more importantly, is your offering a product? In other words, do you just sell it to the users and they run it, and do their analysis, or is it more of a service where you're pretty involved in trying to understand the data, delivering some sort of value add, consulting, advisory, et cetera?
Thank you. Yeah, great. So I guess that I will probably this will be relevant, but this is also relevant. So benchmark labs because to a certain degree, first we understand that there are many solutions there that all claim to be the latest, greatest, and best, but it's very hard to even get quantification in their web pages or in their materials of how are they the best. We wanted to benchmark against the best. We wanted to always provide the value of error reduction versus the National Weather Service versus IBM versus the AccuWeathers of the world. So that's how we started at the Genesis benchmark. The logo represents a Roman symbol of benchmarking that is an important place or site in the world, like a specific farm, for example. In terms of marketing and branding, as we understand that weather forecasts have like many different uses. We didn't want to, let's say, use the traditional green color schemes for our name, or also pointed out as we were a solution that could only serve agriculture. And that's why also our color palette and the bold typeface speaks to other audiences like insurance and energy. And we have been finding some success in those areas. Regarding the services, we provide access to our premium B2B users via API. Some of our users have never used our web interface because they ingest data from our forecast into their own yield forecasting models or decision support systems. Other subset of our users works on the field or gets access via the farm manager in the field, and they required a graphical user interface that allow them to see what is going to happen in the next few hours, in the next few days. And that's how we serve those kind of two different audiences. The premium user, API, data scientist, directly from APIs backends directly, and the persons that are doing work in the field that might need some decision support for irrigation, for pesticides, for labor scheduling, visually use our front end. So we're still trying to navigate which personas are going to bring more revenue per year, but so far both personas using the marketing jargon have shown high willingness to pay.
Hey, thank you so much. I think everybody agree that Benchmark Labs and Carlos is a great addition to the life science transformation community. And you can see on the Aquillius YouTube channel, you can see a more in-depth interview with Carlos. So recommend you going there. Next, so we talked about what happens in the air and managing the people, but what about down at the crop level itself? So next, Dr. Vasavada with Invasive Species Corporation, he and his partner have spent a lot of time and a lot of effort to say how to use biological pesticides and doing that. So welcome to Dr. Vasavada. Also, if you can see an interview with Dr. Vasavada on the Aquillius YouTube channel also. And also Invasive Species Corporation is pretty active on LinkedIn. You want to see more about them, and they've got a pretty good team for talking about working with species to combat invasive species.
Well, thanks very much for the invitation. A real pleasure to be here. First time ever in this space, and it's a beautiful facility. Congratulations to the founders. So I'll be talking about biological control of invasive species in food and agriculture. So I'm the Chief Science Officer at Invasive Species Corporation. It's based in Davis, California. And I actually live in San Diego in Poway, and I've been commuting to Davis for the last 10 years, ever since I got started with agriculture field. Prior to that, I was in biopharmaceuticals, industrial biotech, green tech, you name it. Everything had something to do in common, which was microbes and the cells. And they all require interesting products in those fields, and agriculture happened to be one of the very, very exciting areas. So what I'll talk about is invasive species themselves. What are they? What is the impact? What does Invasive Species Corporation do in terms of biological control as opposed to standard chemical control? And some people call it nasty chemicals. And emerging species for biological targets, and a couple of case studies and summary. So invasive species is something that's introduced, it's non-native. It can be a microbe, it can be an insect, fungus, parasite, plant, animal, etc. And it can be even a disease. And it spreads and expands its range from wherever it came from. And we all have seen weeds growing in the backyard. We've seen lots of ants crawling around. And so this year we have a lot more ants than it used to be. We've seen mosquitoes, and a lot of those things are spreading, and the beetles. And there are more and more examples of those things. And what they do is they can cause crop decimation. If it's in the water, it can be clogging of water facilities and waterways, wildlife and human disease transmission, threats to fisheries, soils, increased fire vulnerability. We've seen that in San Diego County, and also adverse effects for ranchers and farmers. And these definitions are from US Geological Survey as well as US Department of Agriculture. And they are, invasive species happen to, because of climate change, they happen to be some of the most drivers of global biodiversity loss. So it is actually a $500 billion global challenge. And most of us don't realize how much these invasive species are causing the damage, but that is the number that's been published. And also causing the extinction of the various species that are out there. And in terms of food and agriculture, that's also causing a major problem in terms of weeds, for example. Insects are moving northwards from the south because of climate change. Speaking of which, we all have heard about climate change and what it does. And most of us are used to thinking about, well, it's getting warmer. Lots of rain here, and some places there is very little rain. Because of ocean temperatures, there are hurricanes, and they carry lots of weeds, seeds all over the place, and of course the carbon dioxide. And what that does to the agriculture and food production is the soil is being eroded in certain areas when there is a lot of water, and there is other places where there is desertification. Soils are getting saltier and saltier, so plants have a hard time growing in it, and you have to treat the plants appropriately. But that also reduces the farm output, which in turn people apply lots of nutrients, etc. And sometimes when it rains, nutrients also run off into the water, and its cycle starts again. So what do we see here in terms of climate change? So we have USGS has published lots of data on various species that are being introduced because of the climate change. You have land and aquatic weeds such as kudzu, tree of haven on the East Coast, and hydrilla in water in Florida. And these things take over the land and water very, very quickly, and they are devastating. We haven't seen much of that on the West Coast yet, but it is coming. In terms of aquatic invasives, we have zebra mussels and quagga mussels. Most of them have been on the eastern side of the country, but even in Southern California, Hoover Dam, etc., they've been infested with these mussels, and they are very voracious mussels. Then they eat up all the food, and the native species die off. Lionfish in marine water, a beautiful fish when you're snorkeling, but it is a big problem, causing some major issues. And New Zealand mud snails, also in Florida, have been detected. Slow, but they are dangerous. And in terms of soil and forest insects, we have lots of different beetles that are causing issues with the trees, either by themselves or in combination with fungi, pathogenic fungi. So when they transmit into the disease, into the trees start dying off. And when they start dying off, they become fodder for fires. And then the forest fires start. If you have ever been to Banff in Canada, thousands and thousands of acres of brown trees you can see because of the beetle infestation. And that is causing some major issues. And when the trees are gone, it increases the amount of erosion, etc., but also reduces the amount of carbon. And finally, the insect fungi complex. Again, diseases caused by both insects and fungi. Fungi are the major culprit, but they are being carried by the insects into the trees. So climate change has really changed the ecosystem. It has some biological issues there. So it requires continuous innovation. And energy developers, land managers, water managers, they're all scrambling for solutions for some of these major issues. So detection and mitigation programs are definitely important, but also high potency biologicals. There's a major uproar against using chemicals from all environments, all states. And what are the solutions? We have biological solutions which are available for agriculture, but can they be applied beyond the agriculture? So there are bioinsecticides, biological herbicides, aquatic herbicides, fungicides. All of them can be found and developed, but having a appropriate bioprocessing and production technologies and delivery mechanisms, they are less effective. And that's where the innovation happens. So what does ISC do? ISC is Invasive Species Corporation, again, based in Davis, California. So we are really trying to find nature positive solutions for these issues to preserve the biodiversity, work with the climate change and how it can impact the forests, and also improve the economy in terms of yields, reduce the costs, and improve the quality and health. It was founded by Pam Marone. She is a four-time entrepreneur. This is her fourth company. The first three she exited with some successful, after starting successfully. Jim Boyd and Pam started this company together. I joined them after working with them for 9 years in Davis. And Jim Golub is our bio-innovation-driven business development person. We also have some really high-powered board members. Kathleen Merrigan, she was at USDA, Deputy Secretary. Steve Duke is a world-renowned weed scientist, so herbicide developer. And then we have been receiving some funding from Peter Kennedy in Singapore. So biologicals for food and agriculture, there are three different categories. One of them is biopesticides control and bioprotection. Second one is biostimulants and biofertilizer and bionutrients. And what I'm talking about is the first part, which is the biological control. So preventing pests from the farm operations. And this is regulated by EPA as opposed to USDA or FDA. And we've been developing this kind of products for a while. It's a $3.5 billion market with 17% increase annually in its adoption. Why? Because it's very inexpensive to develop these products, less than 5 million, and about 5 years to have a Gen 1 product out and on the farm. It improves the soil health, and people know this, and more organic farmers are being farmers are converting their soil from traditional to organic farming. It does not leave any residues in the field, and there is no resistance that they have found yet. Primarily because it's microbial product, multiple bioactives, and resistance development is very difficult. So it's possible that in about 20 years, biologicals will eclipse the chemical products out there. And the market is just the beginning. And it can be a $120 billion market. So because of that, there's been a lot of investment in the agriculture area. $15.6 billion were invested in 2023 globally. And overall, you have globally almost $205 billion since 2014. So there is a lot of interest in global agriculture and food production, especially a lot of it is also going into biologicals. However, not much has been done for invasive species. Only 4 companies that we know of, including our own, have been dealing with invasive species. We all hear about this in Wall Street Journal, BBC, you name it, NBC. They all have invasive species related news. However, very little work is being done. And you can see that Inveo Science is working on peptides for citrus greening. And in Florida, citrus greening has caused some major issues. Acres and acres of land, citrus trees have been devastated, so much so that companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi are scrambling to find solutions and funding solutions because they are one of the biggest owners of that land. It has also spread to Southern California. Sundew is a company that makes RNAi, engineered algae, for aquatic invasive species. And we, ISC, we're using microbes to find natural products to the invasive species control. So the strategy is we discover, we develop, and we deploy. So discovery part is just beginning. It's been about 5 months since we started. From what we learned previously, we have advanced our thinking about how do you really find microbes and molecules made by them to get ahead in the game. And we're using AI and ML-based technology for herbicides and other things. We are working with some microbial sourcing and extract sourcing for small molecules with University of Michigan. And also we have a grant from burrowing shrimp control in oyster beds in Washington State. In terms of development, we are working with USGS. ArborJet is a company, big company in the US to prevent tree diseases, etc. Working with UC Riverside as well as UC Davis. But also, once we find something, how do you really get to the next stage? So we have a relationship with some commercial companies using fermentation and bioprocess development, formulations, etc. And finally, testing. At the USGS, United States Geological Survey, they are a big stakeholder in the environment in the country. And deployment in the beginning, we'll be working with ArborJet as well as USGS, and we're talking to CAL FIRE about trees. So we have about 8 different products that we have planned. First 2, Ziquanox Gen 1 and Gen 2. Gen 1 is already commercial. We can sell the product now. However, we're competing with chlorine and copper and things like that, which are very inexpensive. However, there is some uproar about using those chemicals because they have side effects. So we have biological product, Ziquanox, that is available. It's expensive. So we have a Gen 2 product to come up with a cost-effective solution. Similarly, something called piscomycin, which kills certain fish for aquatic environments, and we're developing herbicide, algicide, and bioinsecticide. So for a small company, I think we're doing well. We're ahead of the game, and hopefully the first two products are going to be funding some of the other development. And this is the way we do it. It's a very busy slide, but we start with AI or machine learning guided sourcing of molecules or microbes. We find those microbes, we do the genomics work, we do some fermentation in the lab scale, and then high throughput screening on a number of different target species in the lab. We, of course, do DNA sequencing, greenhouse trials, field trials, also find out about what the chemistry is. Why is this particular microbe working? Is it because of a protein, small molecule, or all of the above, so that we can actually track it when we are developing the fermentation process. Formulation becomes a very, very important aspect of the whole program. And then because it has to be deployed and delivered to the field and the target size. So we do a very large scale manufacturing all the way up to 100,000 liter scale to make these products cost effectively for agriculture. So we have two products. I'll talk more about them later. Ziquinox and piscomycin. Ziquinox is for zebra and quagga mussels. It's been tested by energy companies, Lake Michigan, golf courses even, etc. And you can see this picture on the left side of my left. We have a pipe, which is intake pipe from lake, which is completely occluded with mussels. And these mussels they can shut down the energy companies, which supplies water to electricity to farms. We have been able to solve this problem with our product, Nivea Solar product. And same thing with the piscomycin. This is electrofishing, it's called, where the fish are selectively killed. And Asian carp is a big problem there. So Ziquinox is a product that is estimated to have a total addressable market of $1.5 billion. We have, as I mentioned, Gen 1 is commercialized, it's available, it's been used. However, we know certain tricks of the trade where we can actually decrease the production cost significantly, so a lot more people can use it in the field. Again, the major issue is the clogging of pipes in lakes, but also diversity loss in various ecosystems. It is made by a soil microbe called Pseudomonas fluorescens that we isolate, that New York State Museum isolated, and we actually developed that as a product. It has no impact on other aquatic species, a very selective product. We know several molecules that it is producing, including one protein. And it's only 1 6-hour treatment in water that kills the mussels completely. Again, it's been scaled up very well at very large scale. So the protein, the final formulation is ingested by the mussels, and mussels filter feed it, and eventually the protein and other molecules go into the mussels, and over the 3 to 28 days, they die off selectively again. Very effective, and we were talking to Utah State to treat the Snake River, which is a big problem. And they used copper last year, and it killed thousands of fish, which were unwanted in terms of killing, because they are recreational as well as food fish that died. So there is a major uproar about that. So they are considering using biological product, and we're hoping that that can be a major thing for us. Piscomycin, again, the same $1 billion estimated market, working with USGS. It was a product that was already developed, used. However, the company that made this product actually went out of business. So USGS has been scrambling to get this product out. They approached us. We're looking at Gen 1 process right now, and it's looking good. Now it's going to go to the USGS for testing. If it works, we're going to develop a fermentation process for a large-scale opportunity. And it is made by Streptomyces. We have an actinomyces expert in the room here, but these microbes are known to make antibiotics and very, very potent small molecules for pharmaceuticals, but here's an example of something that we use for food and agriculture. It was an approved product, but it has lapsed. So we are going back to EPA with the improved process, and we're hoping that we can start selling the product this year as a Gen 1 product. It works at as little as 25 parts per billion. So it's a very potent molecules. Finally, last 2-3 slides, I'll just brush upon some of the things that we're working on. Biological herbicide is a big problem. We have hundreds of weeds becoming resistant. And if you can see the grass in wheat, corn, rice, soybeans, in all the farm crops, we have some residue issues, the resistant issues. And then glyphosate resistant weeds are also becoming bigger and bigger problem. So other products that we have under development is insecticides. We have licensed this particular 2 insecticides that I personally worked on in the previous company, and they are being used for forestry, fighting some issues with some beetles, and the addressable market happens to be about $500 million, and this is something that we're working with. Another bioinsecticide is for sucking insects, but we are using that for beetles, and it is a microbial product called Chromobacterium subsugi, and it's been used, approved, commercially produced, so we are expanding its application. So, and finally, the algaecide. So during our biodiversity scanning and finding novel microbes, we have found some algaecidal products that we are going to be looking at in the algaecide market, not only in the backyard pool, but also some major issues out there, a $2.3 billion market. So we are a small capital efficient company, and we're hoping that by 2031, with 8 products in the market, we'll get up to about $200 million in sales. We have some basic $1 million pre-seed funding from Silver Strand Capital and some grant from Washington State, but we're hoping that will continue to generate interest and get there. Finally, we have to have a holistic system-based approach to attack the problems that we have in the environment, forestry, land, and water. We are just a small part of the whole picture, and we're hoping to work with our own tools, but also work with the other companies in JV and the technology space. That, thanks very much.
So thank you. Get your questions ready. I'm sure there's a lot of them. I'm going to start with one question, and that is, one of the things that impressed me most about you was your team. You definitely got the quality, experienced people together, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to know how you did that, but I'm going to ask a different question. What is the one thing you do right with your team to coordinate where you go, and how do you decide where to go and what to next to coordinate those high-powered people?
Well, so Pam Marone, this was her 4th company. So this is her 4th company. So she is well known in the field, and I've worked with her. I've known her since '91, and I've been following her in agriculture space, even though I was not in agriculture. And it was really wonderful to have an opportunity to work with her. So and having someone with her caliber was a good start for me to bring my industrial biotech experience and see how we can develop products. We have the other team members came along because they have followed her. In the previous company, Marone Bio Innovations, where it was sold to Bioseries from Argentina, and they invested in that company. They made money off of that. So they are obviously looking at this company, a very potentially successful company. So attracting people like that, especially from agriculture, has been one of the major aspects of Pam Marone's ventures. So hope that answers your question.
Sure. Questions?
Hello, thank you for presenting. That was awesome. Quick question: are these is it transgenic or is it just like a specific isolation? And if not transgenic, what is that patenting process like for you?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you for asking that question. So these are native microbes that are found, discovered by us and associated with appropriate final product. But one of the tacks that we took was not actually releasing the live microbes in the field. So we actually look for the molecules that are made, and we rely on having the molecules as part of the final product. So we kill the microbes knowingly so that they don't release, and there is no public issue. So these are natural and native microbes, nothing to do with transgenics. However, as I said, now we want to see how we can come up with a faster way of doing things, because finding natural molecules in a wild microbe, it takes a long time, 2-3 years to find the molecules in the right, through the chemistry process and biological assay process, etc. So we're looking at the genomics space and see if we can short circuit things using recombinant DNA, synthetic biology technology to overproduce those molecules. However, when we do that, they go through a different classification from EPA standpoint. So they are not biologicals anymore, they're biochemicals, and it's a little bit more stringent work. But we do not work with transgenic plants or anything like that. But microbes are, so far, have been very natural.
Yes, I'm curious to know, in regards to the impact on non-target species within a very diverse, biodiverse environment like an aquatic situation, how do you evaluate and test that you're not having unintended consequences on beneficial organisms?
Yeah, so USGS is very well versed in having access to facilities where they actually can grow certain fish, certain mollusks, weeds, whatever it is that. So they do it in a confined environment, some testing, just like we would do rabbits or rats or dogs or things like that for clinical work. So for the products that we have commercialized, almost 30 or 40 different species were tested individually in there against our products to see whether there were any adverse effects, and there were none whatsoever. So our claim to fame is to finding very specific, targeted, selective molecules. Now, we will not be successful all the time. So the question is, what is the dose range that they can tolerate? Some species are more sensitive to lower dose than higher dose, etc. So we try to minimize the dose to see if it has any. But it's good question. You know, the aquatic environment can be challenging. Yeah.
Hey, Amit, really impressive. I've been tracking you, from the Maroon days, and it's really interesting seeing how you got up with the next venture altogether. And one question I have is, like, in terms of your pipeline from discovery, development, and deployment phase, right? How much time does it take for you to quickly react and get a product up and running? And you obviously, you're working on all these different other market segments simultaneously. And how do you really prioritize, and how are you approaching? Which is curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, again, great question. So priority always depends on how fast we can make money so that we can fund everything else and satisfy the investors. So the first two, while we have the two commercialized or commercializable product near term, that's what we work on first. So we don't have to do any fundamental work anymore in the lab. So our resources are divided up into some discovery for algicides and herbicides, etc., while I personally take part in commercialized products to see how we can actually deploy the products so that we can start generating revenues to fund other work. So that's one. The second part is the actual, let's just say that we found a microbe. How long does it take? So we're looking at about 5 years minimum So the discovery can happen within the first 10 months or 12 months or something, but then understanding how to really develop that into a commercializable product takes another year or more. And Gen 1 can go out to the EPA, for example. So it takes about 2.5 years. So you look, and then you scale up and manufacture. So about 5 years plus or minus 6 months is what we are thinking about as a like. And because it's a Gen 1 product, it can be only $5 to $6 million in development. And this is one of the things about agriculture. You can go into the market very quickly as long as it's safe. And safety is certainly something that we assess very, very early in the process.
Time for one more question. Okay. What do you see is the biggest advancement that can accelerate faster than 5 years? Is there anything, technology, quantum computing, anything you think will make that work even faster?
Yeah, so and this is one of the reasons why we, yes, the answer is yes. We're looking at the omics technologies, genomics based approaches to see if we can identify molecules much more readily, which cuts down on the chemistry time in the lab. So that's one, and also finding novel microbes from nature based on the available data that's out there. So machine learning, AI type of algorithms are something that we're using right now to see if we can short circuit some of the discovery of microbes.
Fantastic. Great talk. Obviously, you've had some power groups here coming in, so thank you very much. Next, we're going to have Dr. K, Craig Kolodge, is coming up, and I don't envy him following those two speakers. So he's got to really be on his game to do that. But one thing I want to make clear is that this event here, I think we brought some great speakers. This is not the end of the conversation. We're part of a larger group. For those that don't know, for example, is the AgTech gathering, which happens in Escondido every quarter, and that's a lot of fun. And we have speakers. So part of this is me looking for other speakers to fit into the AgTech gathering to build that community. And that's everybody doing all aspects of agriculture, everything from growing, planting, soils, changing the food even, and they're growing fish without fish, for example, is one thing, but everything from vertical stacking of plants, everything from drones, automation of the equipment, everything from distribution. So it's a pretty good group. And one of the things that makes that interesting is that you get a mix of government, industry, and academia working together. And once or twice a year, if you're interested in how to win an AgTech hackathon, there, let me know and I'll tell you. So without further ado, Dr. Craig Kolodge of San Pasqual Valley Soils.
Thank you. Can you everybody hear me with this? Oh, I like to move around a lot. Thank you. I am going to be, in fact, it's interesting. Eirik found me through the Ag Hackathon process through another grower, but I'm a local guy here. I live in San Diego County, and I am affiliated with the Frank Conine Dairy, and we're going to go through that real quick. But what I'm going to do is give you a perspective. I'm an ex-University of California farm advisor and academic, worked up in Santa Clara County for a lot of years as the county director, ran the Bay Area Research and Extension Center for the university. So I've been doing this for about 50 years, believe it or not. So I have a lot of different experiences, but what I'd like to do is share with you an experience that's happening right here in San Diego County and how we're surviving as a farm and some of the technology, if you will, that I think can help people that want to continue to farm in San Diego. And I'll give you kind of a thumbnail sketch of what that looks like currently in San Diego, because it's very different than the rest of California. And in fact, in many cases, the rest of the United States. How many farmers do we have in here right now? Show of hands. Anybody? Anybody that's farming at all for a living? Not one person. Interesting. Not surprising. Next, let's see, is there a slide? This it right here? That one, thank you. Okay. I'm associated with, you're gonna hear a lot about compost today, because that's where I spend a lot of my time. I'm affiliated with the Association of Compost Producers, which is the California state chapter of the U.S. Composting Council. And as such, this is our mandate basically is to increase the quality, value, and amount of compost being used in California. But then you might want to ask yourself, why? Who cares? Well, these are some of the supporting organizations. Have about 117 individuals from 97 organizations that are part of the national membership. And most of them are here in California. We have probably the largest composting infrastructure and recycled organics infrastructure in the United States. But let's get to the topic here about para-urban agriculture. How many are familiar with that term? Anybody here heard that one? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. What is it and what it is, why it's important and what its unique characteristics are? It's defined by the Food and Ag Organization as agricultural practices within and around cities which compete for resources. Interesting, compete for resources, land, water, energy, labor, that could also serve other purposes to satisfy the requirements of the urban population. Now, taking a perspective of a pathologist, I'm responsible for studying plant diseases and various aspects of these diseases, such as organisms and environmental conditions, the cause of these diseases, the mechanisms which favor and factor into these diseases, and the interactions. It's a very complex field and very poorly understood, to be perfectly frank. But if we look at it in the simplest terms, and I'm going to really try to simplify all this, if we define the disease as any condition which impairs health or interferes with the normal functioning and survival of a living organism, we can apply that to us, COVID, or we can apply it to plants or animals, what have you. But let's look at the word health, because we hear that one being thrown around a lot, soil health. And I'm going to ask you what that means in just a sec. Definition of health is a state of complete physical, biological, chemical, and communal well-being of a living organism. So with that definition, what's soil health? Anybody have a definition of that? Yeah. Actually, you're real close. Yeah. It's soil that functions as a living ecosystem, which includes the microbiome. So he's just about spot on. It functions, but it includes chemistry, physics, and biology. And that's a major paradigm shift that's happened within the USDA and the Natural Resource Conservation Service, because when I was in grad school, we talked about soil quality, and we knew the chemistry, we knew the physics. We didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to the biology because it was too complicated. Well, that has shifted big time. And the last speaker is a good example of that shift and what you're seeing, particularly as it comes to soils. In your case, it was aquatic. But so a plant pathologist looks at plant disease with this model. To have any disease, you have to have all three of these components happening all at the same time. You have to have a susceptible host, you have to have a virulent pathogen, and you have to have a favorable environment that favors the pathogen over the susceptible host. If I shift any one of these and eliminate it or impact it negatively, I don't have disease, which means I can have the pathogen present. In fact, I don't know how many of you got COVID, but I got COVID. Lasted about a week. Actually, it wasn't bad. Kind of mild, really. Why am I not dead? I was infected, right? Because I wasn't susceptible. I didn't have pre-existing conditions that made me vulnerable to what that organism or that virus really could do. But certainly the environment was favorable. Everybody, it was all over the place. And I was infected. So disease is a real interesting concept, and it's a very dynamic process. So let's take that same model and apply it to agriculture in San Diego. And particularly agriculture that coexists within an urban environment. The susceptible host in this case isn't the land per se as much as it is the very individuals who farm the land or the nurserymen. The virulent pathogen, and I'm going to explain this in just a second, is the waste between our ears, our lack of understanding how to support the host and make that host resistant to going out of business and not being here anymore. And then the favorable environment for a disease that takes the farmer out of business oftentimes are the competing needs and interests that they have to deal with. The waste between our ears. That comes from a book, can't recommend it more highly, by Jerry Gillespie out of Australia. Started the Zero Waste Alliance, International Alliance. And he says, well, I'll read it here in just a sec, but he says, as a human population, our attitudes towards waste have not changed in recent times, even when the climate was telling us we were wrong and what we were doing was a path to certain destruction. And we just simply ignored it. Oops, what happened here? There, okay. Up to 70% of everything in a waste stream, depending, of course, on the source, is organic. Trees, grass, food, dead animals, manure, biosolids, paper, cardboard, you get the picture. This book lays out a different vision. It says the missing ingredient to disrupt climate change is in the trash. It's in what we call trash, which he will say is a concept, not a reality. Because in nature, it doesn't exist. Everything is looked at as a resource and it's cycled. Now, what does that have to do with the survival of farmers in San Diego County? And I'm going to fly through a whole bunch of slides real quick here. Farms as ecosystem service providers. The last remaining commercial dairy farm in San Diego, I happened to work for Frank Conine. Started in 1962. There used to be well over 200 dairies in San Diego County. We're the very last one. And it owes its existence to its role in recycling organic waste via San Pasqual Valley soils. That's just a subsidiary of the dairy. And composting and marketing a value-added amendment for creating soils that are a living ecosystem. To feed the biology in the soil, it needs, the organisms need carbon. That biome needs carbon. That's where the energy is coming from. So we do it. There's a pile of greens. And I'll give you an idea of how large. That's 2 weeks worth of material that we're taking in every day that would have gone to the landfill. And why don't we want it to go to the landfill? How many of you are familiar with Senate Bill 1383, the Short-Lived Climate Pollutant Act in California, passed in 2016, implemented in 2022? Anybody here know what that bill says? It says we're going to divert 75% of these organics we were talking about from our landfill to reduce the amount of methane we're spewing up in the air and heating the planet up with it. Not only is it a bill that was passed, but it has a very significant financial penalty for every city and every citizen who doesn't do this. And they want to accomplish, the goal is 75% diversion of organics from landfills by 2025. That's next year. Well, we're not even close. But that bill is in place. The fine for not doing it for a city, $10,000 a day fine if you do nothing. If you do nothing. So that's driving this. And it's going to increase. California has to increase by over 1.5 million more tons we have to take in than we already are, and we still don't know how to use the stuff we even have. So here's our compost facility. Been around since 2007, 17 years. And that pays all the bills at the dairy. Without that facility, and here's the operation, and you can see the dairy in the background there. We produce what you think of as fine compost, but also this is compost, the overs. And we use different particle sizes to accomplish different things, and we'll talk about that very quickly. We also take all the zoo. How many go to the San Diego Zoo? Where do you think that organic material goes to? Comes to us. We take all of their organic material. They have land around our farm, and we use it. We spread it. By the way, this piece of equipment here, when there were over 200 dairies, there were a lot of pieces of equipment and technology to apply organics to land to build soil health. Now you got one dairy that's got manure spreader in the entire county. We got a real problem here. on the last mile, how we're going to get this material spread if we're going to divert it from a landfill to building healthy soils. But that's what we're doing with it. That's our fourth crop, our alfalfa. 2 applications of compost a year, no synthetic nitrogen. We get 10 cuttings a year for 3 years, and then we rotate into ryegrass. That is transforming what is dead organic material, bacterial biomes, what have you, composting it, making it safe to handle, and applying it twice a year. So this is the last dairy I mentioned, established in 1962. And Frank's goal in life, his mission, is to survive where everybody else failed. Because it's an extremely unprofitable venture, just a dairy by itself without other streams of revenue. And those streams of revenue include feeding his animals with recovered food that you don't have any use for. And we're going to show you that real quick. And then composting. So just those 2 components of the US EPA's food recovery hierarchy. And we literally have trucks that go out and upcycle food byproducts as dairy feedstock. Anybody like microbrewed beer? Where's all that stuff going? Where's all the spent grain going? Well, it comes to us. 18 microbreweries we pick up their spent grains and we feed it to the heifers, the young developing female cows, to produce butter. Here's some processed juice pulp from, there's 5 juice factories. Where's that stuff going? Well, that would have gone to the landfill. We take it and we feed our cows with it and produce butter. Upcycled expired produce as dairy, just all the spent food. And all of you have green bins and you're throwing your food in there. Where's that going to go? Much of it's going to go into a compost facility, but some of it could be used to feed livestock and produce products that we can consume. Bakeries, 13 bakeries, they have a massive amount of stale stuff they can't sell the next day. That was going to the landfill. We take that. That supplements our corn. Other things that we feed our cows, cottonseed. All of you have cotton on, jeans, whatever, came from a plant, and we have a waste product called cottonseed. You can make cottonseed oil with it, or you can feed it to the cows and make butter. And here's last for bulking, almond hulls that cows will eat. You blend it in. We have a different recipes for the different stages of the cow. So that's how we are keeping, we upcycle over 2,600 tons a month of the stuff I just showed you that was going to the landfill. So each month we basically extend the life of the landfill. That's how much they take in every day. The city of San Diego does. Every day they take in 2,600 tons of food waste that we throw away. Big problem. we got to do something about it. So let's look at para-urban ag disease, the disease and loss of a culture, right? Our culture, the way we relate to each other upon agronomic and environmental practices occurs when we fail to connect local communities to the many benefits derived from prioritizing soil health through the responsible and wise application of carbon, compost, and organic bioresources. The benefits of a culture directly associated with farming and what it contributes to our quality of life are no longer considered relevant in the lives of the local urban community. In short, no farmers here, and how many farmers do you personally know? How many young people do you know are going into a career in agriculture? It's not considered a wise career choice, and yet without them, we have no culture based on nature, on the way the cycles work and how we handle our carbon waste. Joni Mitchell, when I was young, she was very popular. She wrote a song. It don't always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone. They paved paradise and you put up a parking lot, and that's where we're at today. We have lost and pushed out so much of our agriculture. In the last 10 years, we lost over 30% of the avocado growers. Did you know that in San Diego? We used to do 60% of the avocados in the country, and now we lost it to Mexico, and we're doing 10% and falling deeply. We are in a crisis agriculturally, not only here in San Diego, but in this country. In San Diego, we have the highest concentration of organic farmers in the nation. That was in 2020. I'm not sure if it's still that, but let's say it is. Ranked number 1 in California and in the nation in the production value of avocados, nursery, and floriculture. That's in the US. Most of it's actually coming from Mexico, imported in. More farms and small farms than any other county in the US. But there's over 5,000 of these. 70% are considered small scale, and the average size of a farm in San Diego County is 4 acres. Very small. We're farming the dairy to support the cows, 750 acres. We're considered probably, we may very well be the largest remaining agricultural operation left locally. In terms of land use, that is. What are the best benefits of local agriculture? Are the benefits of local ag? Well, these are some of the things we talk about when we start with healthy soils. Feed the soil, it feeds the plant, and it does all these other things like improve soil tilth and structure, that biome that gentleman was talking about, water conservation. If I increase the organic matter 1% in an acre foot, 43,560 square feet of soil, how much water, more additional water can I store in that soil with a 1% increase in organic matter? Based on some studies from Michigan State, 16,500 additional gallons are going to be held in that water, that soil that would have run off into the creeks and out into the ocean. We have a tremendous capacity to hold and absorb and infiltrate and replenish our aquifers simply by increasing organic matter and moving carbon to our soils. Carbon storage in the soil, sequestering it, balancing the excess in the atmosphere back into the soil. Big area of research. Not going to go into that too much. But what's the missing research that makes it all work? Healthy farmers and nurserymen. We're losing them. We're losing them. Why? Everybody, including everybody in here. Nobody out here. I didn't see any hands raising. I really want to be a farmer. And I'll tell you why you don't want to really be a farmer when you start looking at the statistics. You want a decent standard of living. And then also, gee, maybe you just might want some land to work. If you didn't inherit it, where are you going to find that? You want educational support for financial planning, and you want a technology that's appropriate to the ag practices for San Diego County. Well, 75%, just to give you a picture, of the farms in the U.S. post less than $50,000 a year in sales in the United States. The bulk of American ag output comes from farms that are sales of 1 million or more. And what's more, many American farmers hold a second job. Almost all the farmers that exist, that are remaining, the vast majority in the United States do it part-time. They get anywhere from 10 to 83% of their income from doing something else other than farming. So let's look at a living standard. What is a living wage in San Diego County? Well, it's the 14th, this was back in 2022, the 14th most expensive city in the United States to live, with a median salary of $63,739. Now, how does that equate when my gross revenue on the average 4-acre farm is less than $50,000 a year? That doesn't even include all the expenses, right? That's just my gross revenue. That's not a very optimistic picture. So the great tragedy of our society is, and the sadness is, that many citizens no longer recognize or even feel the loss of an agricultural society built on these agrarian values that sustain and improve the quality of life and that of our planet right now. We're not aware of it. The key to a healthy ag technology in an urban environment rests on the health of a very community of farmers, young and old, that are dependent upon new ideas and new technologies to solve the challenges of creating a livable wage in an increasingly urban and costly environment. Without the farmers, we have no ag. Simple as that. It's not going to farm itself, the land. Just real quick, Thomas Jefferson warned us of it. The country was established on these principles, and we forgot it. Historically, all urban populations depend on pure urban ag to sustain themselves. However, cheap and plentiful energy pushed it out into the rural areas and allowed us to get away with it. But it's now coming back and biting us because we don't have the environmental services associated with agriculture to solve our urban problems, particularly carbon cycling. What will it take? Recognize the role of healthy, vibrant ag and technology So I'm challenging all of you technologists out here, if you really believe any of this and you really think there's some validity to it, is to look at how you can use technology to help the farmers here in San Diego County. Create a realistic strategic plan in partnership with urban leaders, technologists, and farmers, and prioritize ag needs and resources as an essential part of urban planning and development. We're not doing that. Our urban planners don't have any farmers on the board. Identify the financial resources and funding opportunities necessary to support existing ag enterprises here in San Diego. And embrace the opportunity to be an effective solution to climate change through farming and through carbon farming and regenerative ag practices. And begin to quantitatively measure the benefits of local ag and communicate clearly effectively these benefits to the urban leaders and citizens. Every one of us has a role to play in this. Financially and politically support the development of new local farmers and nurserymen as environmental service providers. A different shift. Just like we don't look at soil as soil quality, we look at it as soil health. This table's not healthy, but it's got a quality to it. But a living soil does have a health. Think creatively outside the box on how ag in partnership with technology can solve local food insecurity, and be patient in dealing with and engaging with public that has long been disconnected from their agrarian past. And kind and tolerant of all viewpoints, because it's going to take all of us to solve this problem. So real quick call to action. We need to monetize the benefits of agriculture everywhere in this country, particularly in urban environments. These are some ways of doing it, some of the areas to focus on in terms of technological advances. And we must do technologically a collaboration and integration across many disciplines to solve these problems. We're having major problems with the last mile of moving organics from the landfill. Even though the goal's there and they've got some regulatory teeth, we don't have the technology to pull it off yet, financially or economically. There are things I will talk to you if you're interested about ways to get additional funding for farmers to do that. And they're very creative. And here's this real quick slide of how you can use technology. This is compost, the recycled compost in Orange County at the Great Park. This was a sock farm. They put the compost in these socks and then fertilized with vermicompost tea in that and grew a crop on what essentially could have been a parking lot. And you could do this anywhere. And you can see what you can do with recycled organics if you just think outside the box. And here it is on tables, so you don't have to bend over it. You want to save the farm workers back, just elevate your socks. Here it is at a school. This is Rod Tyler, who developed the garden sock concept of using a mesh filled with recycled organics to grow vegetables and plants. Here it is at Bell Gardens High School, teaching young people with a program called Green, Globally Responsible Environmental Education Network. You can do this anywhere. Here it is at Huntington Beach, California's high school, where they're protecting the ocean quality by using socks to filter the contaminants coming off the high school lot. If San Diego ag is to have a hopeful future, then we must discover new ways of growing in urban areas that transform and repurpose this landscape in ways we never dreamed possible. I'll end with this. Bouchard Gardens, Eric and I were talking about it. One of the most beautiful places on the planet. This is what it started off with. It was a quarry. And it took one gardener, Mrs. Bouchard, that said, I don't like that and I don't accept that and we're not leaving it like that. And through years of research and education and effort and sweat, she converted it and transformed it to that. It's the same location. We can do this. And then I'm going to play this at the end. Hopefully, I guess what do I do to get this to play? I just want to leave you with this. This is Paul Harvey. Any of you remember Paul Harvey? Let's see if we can play it. I want you to hear what he wrote before he passed. Maybe not. It's about, on the eighth day, God created the farmer. And it talks about what it's like to be a farmer and why so few people, including everybody in this room, doesn't choose it as a career, and yet how important these people are in this community as to our very sustainability and our health as a community. But if it won't play, you said you were able to get it up earlier. It won't play. Just go to Paul Harvey. God created, on the eighth grade, God created the farmer, and listen to it on your own. It's a great snapshot of how much we owe these people that live among us, have for generations, and we need more of them. We need young people to embrace their agrarian. And so this is my contact information. I have my cards. I will say the Waste Between Your Ears, great publication, small. And the U.S. Composting Council publishes for organic watershed management 2 publications. It's the Compost Research and Education Foundation. It's the Compost and Climate Connection and the Soil and Water Connection, and how you use compost to solve all these problems. And then my last pitch for microbial biology, being a microbiologist by training, even the gardeners are now starting to get information in a form. This is written by a chemist, Robert Pavlis, called Microbe Science for Gardeners, and how to grow microbes by simply using recycled organics and inorganics to balance and invigorate the life in the soil. Thanks.
So, quick question. If I could wave my magic wand and the one thing you want most would happen to educate our young people, what would it be?
You asked that. I think we need to start at our elementary schools all the way up. And every school has to have a garden, and lessons to be learned about cycling carbon in our environment. Isn't it amazing that the carbon coming out of the back end of our vehicles and in our factories and that unbalanced our entire environment globally to the point where now we don't know whether we're going to get too much rain, not enough, it's unstable. We know how to fix this. We just have to have the will. We know the science to get this thing back into balance. That's the hope. But the work is educating every one of you in this room, educating and demanding that we re-embrace what Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and everybody knew, is that we're an agrarian nation, right? And every one of us should have, even if it's a pot on your patio, if you don't have a land to grow something, and grow it in a container, grow it in a sock. But re-embrace your agrarian roots and educate.
Maybe we could just focus on putting farms around the Amazon warehouses would probably do a lot. That's a lot of traffic. Question?
Agriculture, and it's true, unfortunately, that's what we are seeing, right? But looking at the practical side of things, I mean, farmers are really smart. They would adapt any technology that would bring in value to them, and so from the standpoint of how could we create a passive income source for the farmers and encourage them to sort of adapt to these sort of best practices, right? I mean, in my career, I've seen in Red River Valley, and a lot of farmers moved away from growing sunflower because they got attracted to corn that could high yield and get better value for them, and so we lost a lot of sunflower acres in the Red River Valley to other technologies, and at the end of the day, how are we going to do the return on investment justification? So I'm just curious, from a practical standpoint, how do we make it happen? There is that willingness and there is that inclination, but
Well,
we can't. I mean, the farmer is already busy doing a lot of these things, right? And if we are telling them to adapt to regenerative or new practices, which I think comes at the expense of his time of managing his operations. So that's just more of a question or a comment,
Yeah, and it's a big question, okay, because every situation is different. Farming in San Diego is very different, as you could see, from anywhere else in California. However, you have to first start by understanding what your resources are and what's unique about your particular area and what your advantages are. We have this phenomenal mild climate. That's why we have so many growers here and have so many people. And we have a large technologically advanced community, but we're not bridging the two. There's such a thing in agriculture as hybrid vigor. Hybrid vigor is when I take the strength of one plant and I merge it genetically through breeding with the benefits of another plant. And I end up with a plant that's got more strength, more resilience. That's what we have to do as a society here. But we're leaving the farmers out of the equation, and these farmers are going to be essential And we need more farms, not less, to solve our environmental problems and to manage and balance our carbon. Where else is this carbon going to go? Back into the landfill where we've been burying it for decades to produce methane and just keep heating the planet up? Is that the solution? Obviously not. But if we sit down and we make a livable wage for people that are willing to commit to this, to be the environmental service providers, if you will, like the Franconines, then we got a shot. But if we think it's not important and we can, I remember when I was a farm advisor in San Jose, Silicon Valley, and my first 2 weeks on the job, I met somebody on the city council, and she said, "Who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm the new farm advisor for Santa Clara County." And she looked at me and she said, "What do we need you for?" She says, "If we need food, we can fly it in from South America or from Mexico. What a waste." And she walked away. That was my introduction to life in Silicon Valley.
We have time for one more question in the back.
Good information.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you say that you wanted people to grow in the backyard, in the house, the moment they started, your basically water rates goes up. You punish people. It's
Your
like
your water rates go
yeah,
up.
The water usage.
Well, it really
It's
depends.
like paying your third mortgage.
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to grow. We farm 250 acres of dry farm grains to feed the cows. I don't apply any additional water to that.
What the thing is, again, if you're going to grow, you do need the water, right?
Absolutely.
So great cause, but I think the link is missing, where you give people the right resources, right information that this is how to use it. I love the idea, but it's not connected.
Well, that just means we need some smart people to solve a
Yeah.
water problem.
I would
I agree with you.
I would argue that with you, but I don't have the time right now.
You do not have the time, but we have
But
plenty of
I'd be glad to
networking
talk to you
coming up.
about that.
We have plenty of networking
Yeah.
to argue about that. In fact, we have networking right now, so we're on break till 3:15, and then we will be doing our startup showcase. So come back for that, and then networking tonight. Okay, well, we had a really fascinating talk earlier about pesticides. So one of the problems with pesticides is how do you even know they're there? So Wild Genomics is going to answer that question with Eirik Torheim, and I'm told that if you want to visit him later on, you'll have to go to Norway. With that being said, Wild Genomics, Eirik Torheim.
Thanks a lot. All right, so I'm Eirik from Wild Genomics. I'm the business lead. I have a co-founder, Vilge. She is technical lead. I'll show you where we are at. Let me introduce you to farmer Seth Tillery. He's a organic citrus farmer in Exeter, California. It's a fairly small farm, but he has told us that there's an added cost to growing organically. Still growing organically and applying regenerative farming practices is becoming more and more the norm. At least there's a movement in that direction. The challenge, as I mentioned, is that it's more costly, and you have fewer tools for dealing with pests. But you do manage to avoid the damaging effects of pesticides, and you can also get in early and meet those changes in regulation that we're expecting. So as I mentioned, when you're growing organically, you have fewer tools, and that makes it more important to come in early to manage the pests. And this is where we are supporting our farmers by continuous monitoring and early detection of pests. And that helps the farmers also address these pests at a lower cost. So our value proposition is, one, to save the farmer time. We can save them up to 90% compared to traditional ways of monitoring. Two is to reduce the use of pesticides and reduce the costs associated with applying pesticides. And then even they can have an increase in yield if they apply regenerative farming practices in a good way and have a healthier soil. So the market size we're addressing is represented by the damage caused by pests, which is $220 billion globally. The smart pest monitoring market, which we're It's more like a niche market. It's an $800 million market, and we're looking to attain about 10% of that market in North America over the next 5 years. And that corresponds to about $35 million. This could be some feedback. So this is our sampling device. First iteration. It's fairly simple. So we basically ship the sampling device to the farmer, and the farmer collects the sample and mail those samples back to us. And then within 72 hours, we get back to them with the data through a web application. And this data allows them to address the issue with a precise intervention, supported by a network of pest control providers that we are integrating with. So our combination of air sampling plus DNA barcoding provides both very high precision and species identification, but also allows us to address a very broad range of pests. So we call ourselves pest agnostic. It doesn't matter what comes in, we'll be able to detect it. At least in theory, we'll prove it in the coming years. DNA barcoding is also a lower cost approach to DNA sequencing, so we can do all of this at a lower cost than the farmers pay today for similar services. So our competitive advantages include, well, one, that we're non-invasive. We don't kill any insects while we're collecting these samples. We can capture a very wide range of species, and we can identify them very precisely. We can also provide early detection through our continuous monitoring approach, and our service is easy to set up and highly scalable as well. So our beachhead market is California specialty crops. So the barriers of entry into other states are low, and we expect to be able to expand across the nation in a fairly short time. Actually, our first paying customer is in Iowa. He's a soybean farmer. So since all this, the shipping is done by mail, so it's really easy to access the whole country. So these are some projections for our revenue growth over the next 3 years, divided up on those 3 markets. So our mission is to offer precision pest monitoring to help reduce use of pesticides, and to support that we are tracking some key performance indicators, such as the number of pests that we can identify, as well as the amount of pesticides that our farmers are avoiding using. Our main sales channels are through industry events and referrals. And even though the independent farmers are our end users and currently our main customer, there are other customer segments as well, including the farm cooperatives and pest control advisors. Financially, we're looking to break even in year 4 after 3 years of refining and growing the service. In year 5, we're expecting to be able to provide our service at a cost less than $10 per sample, which is much less than farmers will pay today for DNA sequencing samples. This is our team, 2 co-founders, as I mentioned. Bilge is an environmental DNA sequencing expert. I'm a serial entrepreneur with a long background in life science. I just graduated from Radio School of Management with an MBA. From there, we also have a group of my classmates who've been helping us. And we've started building a strategic advisory board, which currently consists of Dr. Elizabeth Lyons from UCSD and Dr. Ana Maria Moreno, who's a local biotech founder. So this is where we're at pretty much. We're currently working on incorporating, and we are running beta testing with our first customers, preparing to raise funding within the next year. I'll leave it there. So anything you can help, in terms of call to action, if you have a way to help us with industry contacts, potential investors, we'd much appreciate that. Also advice for public funding and so on.
Okay, so I'm going to put a pause on the clock just for a second to let the judges introduce themselves. And also you should see the QR code. I'll move them down there. If you judges could scan that and log in there. And of course, to turn on the mics, you just press the button at the bottom, but I'll give Matt mine so that we're ready.
Hey everyone, my name is Matthew. I've been independently investing for about 12 years now. First, I started in stocks and then crypto in the past couple of years, and then more recently a piece of real estate. And that's allowed me to travel the world and research health, wellness, and personal development, which is my passions. So I'm grateful to be here and look forward to hearing the pitches.
Hi, my name is Joe. I'm this second-time judge here, and I'm from Legendary Ventures. We're a $1.8 billion venture fund, and we are industry agnostic, and we look at everything. If it's a good deal, it's a good deal.
Is this on? Hi, everyone. My name is Emmanuel. I'm an entrepreneur turned investor. Spent about 6 years in a software venture capital world, and then in 2017 started a firm called Chisos Capital, which is a super early stage day one investment group, and we have about 70 investments.
Hi, my name is Venki Pegaraju, and background is in genomics, genetics. I've had an opportunity to work with 4 startups and successfully exited. And I'm an entrepreneur resident with UCSD and mentor to a lot of accelerator programs, and also an angel investor in early stage genomics-based startup companies. Thanks.
All right, start the clock. You've got just a few minutes for questions from the judges.
Yeah, so curious, so like you're detecting, but let's say let's say you have a positive, detection of some sort of a pest, and how quickly can farmers be able to react to that? Are you creating that entire ecosystem, or is it just like the diagnostic aspect of it? And one thing which wasn't really clear to me is, like you said, it's non-invasive. Can you elaborate a little bit more on, like, how would you be able to, like, say if you have a sapsucker or a chewing insect, how would you capture the sample on those? Thanks.
Yeah, great question. So it's non-invasive because we're filtering air. We're not taking any specimens. We're not trapping any insects. But in the air, there are particles floating, and those particles contain DNA from everything that's living in the area: plants, animals, insects, molds, and bacteria. And we're specifically interested in the insects, the bacteria, and the molds, because they're responsible for most of the agricultural diseases. But we can trace them in the air without sampling them specifically. And that also helps us identify pests that you can't even see. So you don't have to see the bug before you can find them in our testing. And you had a question about the ecosystem. So this is our way to get started. We're doing samples are being mailed to us and analyzed in our lab. Ultimately, we'll have a device to do everything in the field, but for now, it's mailed. The data is backed we're using machine learning to identify the best approach to deal with any particular pest situation. And that data will be fed to the farmer within 72 hours of us receiving the sample. And then it'll also be paired with advice on how to deal with that particular pest. And in terms of ecosystem, the providers of pest control measures for that pest, including biological measures like ladybugs for aphids, for example.
All right, time for one quick question.
Hi, Eirik. I'm always infatuated with just why entrepreneurs get into this field. And could you tell us a little bit about obviously you've got a background in genomics, but why this?
Well, both myself and Bilge were very passionate about nature. She has the environmental DNA sequencing background. And when we met, we started looking into how can we apply this technology to actually make an impact on nature. And there are many, there's also biomonitoring in forests and wild nature, but this is very tangible. There's a need among farmers to pay for this, or not to pay, but to have this problem solved, and they're willing to pay. So yeah, basically supporting biodiversity and nature through helping the farmers. Sure. I don't think the clock actually stopped, by the way.
What's that?
I don't think the clock actually stopped when you introduced the judges.
Oh, no, it didn't, but
You had another one? Okay.
yeah, I had my own time backing that up. So no, that, but
then we're good.
that did there. So you got fair
Yeah.
measured time. So we talked about decarbonization and regenerative farming, and that's next. So next will be Chloroboost.
Hello, let's learn about Boost. What is a personalized biofertilizer? But before we learn that, do you know the 40% of all the water is consumed in agriculture for irrigation? Chloroboost reduces the irrigation needs by holding the water in the soil for long term and then discharging it slowly, reducing the evaporation and improving the soil quality. Another big problem with fertilizers are the use of chemical synthetic materials that seep into your water system, contaminate your water, contaminate your air, and contaminate the food you eat. The third problem is the use of water again. So Chloroboost can use harvested rainwater, water, hard water, water high in salinity, and even remediates wastewater. But the best benefit is it fights climate change by making agriculture carbon negative, since it sequesters carbon dioxide from the air. How do we do it? We simply use a blend of microbial that is targeted for the particular soil set. It provides nutrition to the soil naturally from the air. It's symbiotic with the soil and the environment. It's organic, regenerative, and natural, and it improves germination and yield. So our business model is simple. It's to empower the farmer. We personalize the culture based on the region, soil, and crop. We send the culture directly to the farmer. Farmer can grow the culture in their own ecosystem using a water reservoir, then discharge it when the culture matures, and let the sun do its job, slowly drying it, and here you have your perfect soil. What are the other benefits to the farmer? Well, it's help you save cost with water, heavy logistics, and need to buy fertilizer again and again, because traditional fertilizer also degrade your soil quality. Not only that, it also meets with the UN sustainability goals, and you can get a lot of government subsidies. But the best thing, all the carbon you are sequestering, you can sell that on our platform. So the market for the biofertilizer is growing at a 10% rate. The market will be around $10 billion in the next 5 years. We hope to achieve the North American market of $2 billion and get a revenue of $60 million in the next 5 years after we launch. So this is our 2-year action plan. We just started right now, and we are looking to have a pilot study here in the United States by the end of this year, have the data from it, tweak it, and have a regional launch by the beginning of 2026. So our early adopters will be seaside parks that are high in salinity, landscape that are barren or very arid, community gardens here in San Diego, or small farms. We are looking for $600,000 to make that happen, to bring the product into the market. I started this project back in India in my grandfather's farm, and I'm trying to have a team here locally in San Diego. I'm trying to build a team right now. I also have some partners in Germany and Australia. So in summary, Chloroboost helps save water, protect the environment, prevent contamination, empower farmers, and fight climate change. Thank you.
Judges, you've got about 6 minutes for questions.
So, I'm trying to understand, how are you going to measure the carbon, sequestration? Because it's a very complex process. I mean, I don't think we have, clear mechanisms in place to measure. So you need to establish a baseline prior to engaging with these farmers, but then also you need to have appropriate sensor technologies. Or so if you can add a little bit more color on how you plan on. And so there's one thing to measure and demonstrate that you are able to build up the carbon, but how are you going to monetize that? And are you going to take a click of that action, or is the farmer going to be benefited? What's the model like?
So we are measuring the carbon dioxide sequester during the growth phase itself and how much the farmer is using. Then they can use our platform to sell that carbon credits directly to the companies, and we are going to take a commission out of that. So we are currently building a platform.
So are you going to be partnering with an external agency to measure
Yes.
the carbon and register the carbon credits?
Mhm.
So what's I didn't see the plan on that one, so I'm just curious. What's your approach?
That's still in the works.
I have a question. How easy is this to be copied by some other competitor?
I mean, they can copy it, but again, there's a lot of different logistics involved. Like, how can you make sure your microbial blend's gonna work in every region? So they are having a problem with scaling this. And that's why it took me so many years to make it sure that it can be scaled globally. Again, the goal here is not about just for the money, but to empower the farmer and solve the food system.
Kanav, tell me how you find your customers. I mean, I saw your local targets there, but that's not going to be much of a market.
So we are starting with some collaboration with small communities here. And based on the data we're gonna get, we are also gonna approach like small and medium-sized farmers. It all depends on how much cost they're gonna save over time with their water and fertilizer use, but also about the ability for them to get the ESG funding and meet their UN sustainability goals while also able to sell the carbon credits. So when I had a pilot study back in India, we were using an open pond.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you, Chloroboost. So earlier, one of our speakers talked about how do you make money back for farming? We're talking carbon credits. Now we're going to be talking about actually mining, using plants to actually mine your farm. So up next is Rare Flora. And Anthony Aylward.
Thanks. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Aylward, and I'm going to talk to you about Rare Flora, where we're using plants to mine rare earth elements. So there's a huge market for these things that's several $billion globally, a couple $1 billion domestically, and even if we go for a small slice of that, it's looking at like $100 million. The way we want to do this is by extracting rare earth elements from soil with plants by a process known as phytomining. So the usual way you get rare earth elements is by an open pit mine, which is extremely expensive, time consuming, environmentally destructive, and geographically concentrated. Most of them come from China. Phytomining is our solution to this. And it works by planting plants on metal-rich soil, in this case, rare earth-rich, having that metal brought up into the plant's above ground biomass, then harvesting the plants and processing it into what we call bio-ore, a material that's very rich in those rare earths. And this avoids those downsides of open pit mining. It's much less expensive upfront. You can start a phytomining farm in months, theoretically. It's much more environmentally sustainable than an open pit mine, and especially geographically accessible. There's a range of sites in just the United States with soils that are rich in rare earths. So for a couple examples of that, we're working with collaborators at the University of Idaho and University of Nevada who have their own projects targeting rare earth soils. And they also have methodologies in place to extract metals from plant biomass. What they're missing is the perfect plant to do this with. So if we look at our collaborators in Idaho, where they're working with soil from the Diamond Creek project here, that is up to 3% rare earths by weight, they've, in collaboration with us, identified a good candidate, in fact, a couple of plant that can grow on this soil and take metal into its stems and leaves. The only missing piece to make this an economical system you can get rare earths out of is to enhance the rate of metal uptake into the plant. So like just get a little more metal in that above ground biomass. And that's what we're doing at Rare Flora by a couple of methods, either by treating the soil with peptides or small molecules that target the behavior of the roots, or by actually genetically engineering the plant itself. We're enhancing the uptake rate of the metal into the plant's above ground biomass. And that's what's going to create an economically viable phytomining system. The business model here is the like confluence of these three stakeholders that I've discussed. Looking at our Idaho example again, we're working with the University of Idaho, who is prepared to process their biomass. They are connecting us with, excuse me, Idaho Strategic Materials, who owns this rare earth rich land where the soil is. And we, Rare Flora, are setting up to be essentially the provider of the seeds and the license for the genetics for these plants that can grow on this soil and be this part of the process, ultimately to produce that bio ore and sell it into the rare earth element supply chain. So we're actually not the only company that's setting up to do phytomining and extract metal with plants. There are several others, especially in Europe. We are the only ones who are set up with collaborators to target rare earth elements. Here we are. This project got started with myself and my colleague Ying Sun when we were working at the Harnessing Plants Initiative over at the Salk Institute. And we were able to connect with some very helpful collaborators at the University of Idaho and University of Nevada, where we are spearheading these projects. And so now I guess I have a few minutes to take your questions. So thank you very much. I can
Hello.
please.
Yep. I apologize. I was fiddling with the QR code when you started here. Can you say again what sort of the problem solution is?
Yeah. So the big problem is that so especially if you think about the technologies that are needed to have renewable energy and electric vehicles, these are very intensive in like the use of rare earth elements, mainly for permanent magnets. And the projections are that you're going to need like 10 times as much rare earths to meet either global wind power goals or US electric vehicle goals. And that's just arguably, I think, not reasonable to expect you're just going to dig more open pit mines to get that. So by employing a phytomining strategy, we can actually have a sustainable source of these critical metals, and also, like, fairly importantly, have a domestic source of them, which is why we're currently looking at places in Idaho, and our other projects are looking at places like Michigan, Minnesota. And yes, I think that is most of the answer.
So just finish off the solution part. You have these magic plants that extract the rare earths. Then what happens?
So then they go, so you have basically you harvest them, you have the plant dry biomass, which goes into a process to convert it into what we call bio-ore, either by heating it without oxygen, which is what we call pyrolysis, which is similar to the process for biochar, if anyone's familiar with that, which basically evaporates a lot of the extra material from the plant biomass out and leaves this sort of very metal-rich charcoal-like substance, which is what we call the bio-ore, which in fact is significantly more concentrated with metals than the usual rock ore you would get out of a pit mine. And that material we expect to be able to sell into the supply chain for whatever other metal processor and supplier will be refining it to then eventually go into a permanent magnet or other application.
So I have a question. When, as opposed to the traditional method, how much is lost in the refinement process when you turn it from the bio?
Oh, that's a really good question. You mean, let's see, so I don't have the references to answer that right now. Are you thinking in terms of like refining the ore, or in terms
Just
of
simple, if you were to just mine it straight weight to weight, and if you were to phytomine it, and part of that phytomining process, it's being uptaken into the plant, and then you burn it, and then you refine it, and you get it out after it's being took from the plant. So how much is left versus if you just traditionally mined it?
well,
what is lost is what I'm saying.
how much metal is lost?
Yes, of the rare earth metal.
So the rare earth metals, like the reason for doing the pyrolysis process is because you're using basically the weight of the rare earth elements, and they are very heavy, to keep them in place while the rest of the material evaporates. And we don't really factor in a very large fraction of the metal leaving during the conversion process, really, which is why we're looking at the actual plant's uptake as the limiting factor. I think based on what we're looking at in our collaborators' labs, it's a very small fraction of metal that is going to leave the pyrolysis chamber. So whatever we get into the plant, we do expect to get also into the bio-ore.
And just one last point is, it's not to say that you get all of the metal in the rock itself. Like, so you would have a second pass through it after you do the phytomining.
Yeah, this is a really important question. I would expect to have several. It's basically one crop per year, and I would expect to have several years of that. It would maybe be really awesome if we could get all of the metal out of the soil in 1 year, but I don't think we're going to have the plant that does that immediately.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
We had a discussion earlier about pathogens and how do you find out where they are. So next we are going to talk about Valortrac's method of monitoring bacteria and pathogens.
All right, awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Bryce, Taira. I'm representing Valortrac. What we're doing here is we're building UAV sensors to detect unseen pathogens or bacteria that might occur in crops and also in livestock. And one of the main reasons, before I go into the tech, that we're looking at this is because Right now with current methods today, whether it's PCR or Petri type of testing, currently you have to have like a 24-hour, maybe even a 48-hour turnaround, which takes a long time. So the goal is to basically pair against hyperspectral imaging to basically identify the problem, while we also use a drone to actually use this technology to actually take the sample. So what you're seeing here is it's a surface enhanced Raman spectrometer. These are somewhat big, but I do have a line to a manufacturer that makes one that's less than a quarter of a pound to be accessed and to keep the weight of the payload on the drone less than 5 pounds. So the way it works is whether it's air, water, or some material, we basically use this spectrometer, and it produces a laser that images or basically shoots against a gold nanoparticle that basically, when it changes color, as you can see on the right there, where you see kind of like the wavelengths there, that's basically fingerprinting what you see as the pathogen or bacteria. So that's kind of how it works. And, you know, kind of moving on from that, it's a proven technology. It's already in biomedical space. It's in environmental monitoring. It's in food safety. And I come from the food safety and compliance background. I also work with a lot of different commercial insurance companies in my prior life. And this is kind of the area we're looking to extend that capability to. So crop health monitoring, livestock monitoring, soil analysis. This one is pretty particular. I know a lot of people kind of talked about this today. Also in any kind of pesticide residue that might come off from, come off from any kind of pesticides used in the crops and field, and also to get yield optimization is ultimate goal. So this is kind of what we're thinking. Maybe the mock-up might be, I know it's an AI generated picture, but what it is we'll be having like the sensor attached to a winch where we'll be able to actually come down to the surface, take that type of sample, and it's all driven directly through mobile applications. So it's very easy to use. One of the things that has not been done yet, though, is to take the sample directly from the air, which we are going to be looking at and building a new type of device that's additive to this, but still making the payload less than 5 pounds. So it's capable to fit on the majority of the drones that actually are currently being used in farming technology today. And these are the specifications that we hope to stay with, which is basically pathogen detection time, basically detect it in under 15 minutes instead of waiting for a PCR turnaround, 24, 48 hours. Also to have the drone flight time around an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And then also to have the mobile integration application. And that could feed in, the hope and goal is I work primarily in systems integration. So the hope and goal is you can patch it into your ERP or all of these kind of things, work with a lot of major CPG manufacturing companies. And I think that this is basically the way where we can develop that kind of going further. And if you know anything about not just food waste, but also any kind of food safety or product recalls, by the time it actually happens, the food's already out there. So the goal is to get an early detection, not to get 100% detection, but early detection. And these are some of the areas of market opportunity. Again, really, the food safety compliance is really near and dear to me. That's kind of why I got into this. And the size of the market, it's pretty big, especially from the UAV technology now being used in agriculture, ag tech, clean tech. But also, we're looking at just the Southern California market, which is around 15.4 million. And this is kind of the reasons why now a lot of more regulatory and the environment concurrently. Also, different investment trends are kind of trending in this way as drone and different type of new technologies coming out today, where people are spending a lot of money to basically raise up different type of startups. So this is kind of where we have our advantage. We have a reusable process. It's reconfigurable. Multi-sensing, it can sense multi pathogens and bacteria and also different elements in the air at the same time. And also it's an immediate identification. And here's a couple of top competitors currently in the market now. And this is kind of our mission. We want to basically take something that's off the shelf and then build up to different type of capabilities as we add on to that. And also the other thing we're doing is going to be adding on an AI ML backend that basically gives a step-by-step process to the farmer or to someone who's caring for the livestock to basically manage their process. And this is our team here. I'm a recent grad from USC out of the MBA program. That's where I met these guys. So myself, I'm primarily in food and beverage manufacturing. Tim is our veteran lead. So we're a service disabled veteran-owned firm. And he also helps me to get non-dilutive funding, call it NIH, call it DOD, whatever you might think of. And Shurin, he spent his whole time in his PhD in photonics, which is the current technology we're working on. And currently, he's also looking to partner that with a LiDAR system, specifically with hyperspatial. And we're looking to raise about $1 million. This is kind of like where we're seeing spreading that across 18 months worth of materials, lab services, and so on. And yeah, that's kind of it. So thank you.
So Bryce, how are you going to price this product?
Yeah,
is it
great question. Yeah, so my model right now for the business model is to basically price it along with people who are already manufacturing the product. So the sensor company I mentioned earlier is in San Jose, and we have an agreement where we're going to be working together and developing the product together and selling the service and also any other co-created applications together for this particular product. Yeah.
How much would that be like, per acre? You're going to charge something like, and what would be an estimated pricing on that?
So the sensors are pretty expensive. They're roughly somewhere in the $15,000 to $30,000 range for this particular sensor. Currently, right now, because they're made in low quantity, that's kind of where the scaling hasn't really taken place. But our goal is really to scale that up where we can get it down maybe in the 10,000 range, and also add on this application and service as part of a subscription package.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at your competitors. Are they really your competitors? Because they don't offer the level of scale.
They don't. They're currently in the space where they take different. So kind of like what we heard earlier, where you can send in your samples and basically they turn around and give you your result within about a 24 or 48 hour turnaround. But the problem with that is they have, I will say this, they're more of my competitors because they have captured most of the customers out there until maybe a new technology like this is vetted and proven.
Yeah, one other follow-up question is that in terms of when you are doing the scanning, right? Will you have the ability to go down into the canopy? Because some of the disease, as it progresses, it may not be, at the aerial, I mean, like aerial shot, some of them are root bone or whatever, right? So how would you basically overcome those sort of limitations?
So we have a set of tests that we're going to be running where it's basically capturing from, like I was mentioning, the water, land, and also air sampling. And then to determine what the range of sensitivity is before we actually go and modify the sensor for this capability. So originally this came out because I was working on an application, specifically this, where it was built for the Department of Defense. Specifically, we're working with USC's Institute of Creative Technologies to detect chemical warfare from the air, to understand that data point. So that's on one side, we're doing that. And on the other side, we're working towards agriculture and clean tech. So that's kind of what we're doing now. So I have like 20 seconds left, but is there any other questions?
Hey, Bryce, I just might have missed this, but are you actually deploying the drones and flying them, or are you handing them to a service provider, or who's doing the work?
USC actually has a drone project, and we're also in talks with Cal State Long Beach as well for a rover project as well.
No, I mean, when you're in market, how does this get deployed or implemented?
So Right. So for that specifically, yeah, I'm not exactly sure who would be the specific operators for that just yet, to your point. But currently right now, we have drone operators that have signed on with us to basically do all of the testing. That might be something future I'll be looking at to develop. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys.
So we're on a sensor roll here. So the next is Pest Technologies, which will talk about more great sensors. I know Elliot can't see the timer, so we'll help, but you got 10 minutes total, however you want to break it up. Questions, pitch, your choice.
Great. And then should I just share my screen? Is that the best way to do this?
Go ahead and share your screen. You should be fine.
Perfect. All right. See if that'll load. Okay. All right, can everyone see that? Looks like it.
Yep, we see it.
Perfect, thank you. All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Elliot Strand, co-founder of Pest Technologies, where our mission is to revolutionize environmental monitoring with distributed sensor technology. So here I'm showing a map of the state of Pennsylvania. So why are we looking at this map? That is because Pennsylvania consists of about 12 million hectares of land, which is how much arable land our planet is losing to grow food on every year due to soil degradation and urbanization. A recent report from the White House came out that stated that we cannot simply rely on more land, water, or energy to boost productivity. We need to harness the power of innovation. And one innovative solution is through controlled environment agriculture. By growing food indoors, farmers can use 90% less water, 7 times less land, and can grow 24/7, 365 days a year in any environment, such as in the middle of a city. But there's a problem within the indoor agricultural market. Right now, growers are forced to send hydroponic fluid samples to labs to get a better understanding of how they should fertilize their growing fluid. This process is not only expensive and costs about $200 million each year in the US, but is also quite labor intensive and takes about 10 to 14 days to receive the data, which makes it very difficult to make effective decisions. Our technology is the solution to this problem. We use printing processes similar to how magazines or newspapers are made to manufacture high-tech chemical sensors at extremely low cost. Our sensors can be plugged directly into traditional readout electronics for both handheld and wireless data capture, as well as incorporating a software data analytics app to provide the affordable real-time data that our customers desperately need. Through extensive customer discovery, we've identified through hundreds of customer discovery interviews through both the regional and national ICOR programs. We've determined an ideal product market fit within this space. By adopting Page's solution, indoor growers can increase their revenue per farm by about 140,000 each year, mainly due to increased yields, reduced labor, and reduced fertilizer costs. We've been gaining a ton of traction in this market. We've already established partnerships with both end users who want to pilot our technology, as well as distributors who want to sell our products across the market. We're also very excited to bring our technology into parallel markets and partner with big players such as Syngenta to test our technology at their new soil health testing facility located outside of Fort Collins in Colorado. When comparing our technology to others on the market, There simply are no other solutions that can offer both real-time data at our price point. In other words, it only takes a few dollars for us to manufacture our sensors, and it takes about 10 seconds for them to receive the data. While our go-to-market strategy is focused on hydroponic testing within the US, we have a platform technology and can measure a variety of different parameters in various environments. And we envision a world where Page's sensors are distributed everywhere to be used for various applications such as outdoor agriculture, in-field carbon sequestration, wastewater treatment, as well as environmental protection to mitigate issues such as nutrient runoff due to over-fertilization. Our team was born out of a 4-year research partnership between the University of Colorado Boulder and the University of California, Berkeley. My co-founder Peyton and I invented the technology, and we have an exclusive option agreement in place with CU Boulder and are finalizing a term sheet with UC Berkeley to license all of the relevant IP. We'll also be developing additional IP as we continue to develop the technology for commercialization. We also have an elite team of advisors who have all started their own companies, both in the ag tech and water monitoring markets, and have really accelerated our path towards commercialization. Here's our upcoming roadmap. We used the Lab Venture Challenge First Place Award to construct and demo our proof of concept prototype at the Indoor AgCon trade show in Las Vegas. We recently secured a $250,000 non-dilutive grant from the state of Colorado, which we're going to use to hire our core engineering team, conduct a series of pilot tests to optimize our product market fit, and launch our first product line at scale in Q1 of 2026 before scaling up. We're going to be offering a subscription plan that combines our hardware and software platform into one subscription, and it's very customizable and can be tailored depending on our customer and depending on what types of parameters they want to detect and what kind of features they want on the analytics side. We also see opportunities to enter into consumer markets, folks such as hobbyist growers who want to get a better understanding of the real-time chemical composition of their local environment. Here's our revenue forecast over the next 3 years. We're going to start with paid pilot tests with our first pre-seed round, and we're also going to be partnering with distributors who already have the distribution and sales channels in place to quickly spread our product across the market. And I just want to highlight that this forecast actually only accounts for penetration within the indoor agricultural sector, but we actually anticipate in entering parallel markets during the first half of 2027. Right now, we're raising $500,000 to fulfill the 2-to-1 match requirement for the $250,000 non-dilutive grant from the state of Colorado. This will provide us an 18-month runway to conduct pilot tests and secure our initial revenue. And we also were approved recently by a tax credit from the state of Colorado to our investors as well. And with that, I just want to say thank you all so much for your attention, and I am more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So of the sensor data that is typical for these farming operations, what percentage or how vast is your reach as far as the sensors that your company is producing?
Yeah, so typically in the indoor ag space, especially, and outdoor as well, EC or salinity is very commonly measured, as well as pH and temperature, which we've done all of that at lab scale. But the novelty is that we're focusing on, like, our first product line will be pH as well as NPK macronutrients. So your nitrate, potassium, and phosphate, which just there just really isn't hardware that's a reasonable price that can measure those specific nutrient concentrations.
And so for pH and NPK macronutrient test sensors that you're developing for those measurements, how accurate have they proven to be, like, in your testing so far, or have you not tested them yet?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, we've tested them in active growing media. Right now, we're at about 15% accurate compared to ground truth lab measurements. It's difficult with soil since you can send a sample to 10 different soil labs and you're going to get a slightly different parameter, kind of, what the ion concentration is per lab. But we've been focusing on hydroponic testing, and we're at about 15%. We want to get it down to 10%, which I think we can do through innovation. But a lot of the growers that we've spoken to are are happy with 20%. They just want the data instantly and not have to wait, a couple weeks to receive the data.
Hey, Elliot, where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Boulder, Colorado.
Let's go Buffs. Thanks for the presentation. Is your a monitor disposable, the little red thing we're looking at, or is that actual reusable firmware, or what is it?
Yeah. So that kind of image on the far left of the top right quadrant, that is kind of an example of a printed sensor strip. And that can be used. So far we've done stability measurements, and it can be used for continuous monitoring for up to a month of fully exposed in the growing environment. So it's not a single use measurement.
A quick question, like, we've seen the first wave of the indoor ag, ventures that really have struggled to sustain and, be profitable. Like, we've seen a lot of aero farms and other companies have really struggled and currently, shut down. But I think this is really going to be interesting to see the second wave of the control environment agriculture startups, which most of them are going to be your customers. So I'm just kind of curious to understand, how are you protecting yourself? How are you creating that moat that would give you that sustained competitive advantage? And can you speak to that a little bit? And you mentioned here some IP protection. Is that approved, or where do you stand with all of that?
Yeah. So yeah, great question. So the novelty, the kind of, special sauce, if you will, of our technology is, both how we manufacture the devices. So using these very scalable, low cost printing methods, as well as the device architecture. So kind of what, that image on the left kind of shows a couple layers, but there are a few other layers that go into our device to get it to have very similar performance as commercial sensors. And that's the part that we have protected in these various patent applications. Right now, they're all mostly at the PCT stage, so they're patent treaties, so haven't been fully approved by the USPTO as of today. And just to kind of comment on the indoor ag space, it's definitely shifting a lot. I think there's a big heat. There's kind of two segments of that market, both kind of smart high-tech greenhouses, as well as vertical farms that use artificial lighting. And those are the ones that have been really struggling. And a big problem is the lack of labor. Just having highly skilled growers that can really have the know-how to operate those, in a positive profit way. But it's really leading in towards automation is really what we're seeing, and the ability to be, for example, to automate their fertigation system to, perfectly dose their nutrients based on real-time nutrient data is really where we're seeing it headed. Kind of like a turnkey system where you just, you turn on the system and it just grows, and there's very little input from a user. I think where it's heading.
So round of applause for Page Technologies. Now round of applause for all our startup pitches today. Thank you to the judges. Now comes the best part of the day. We've got showcasing and networking coming. Highly recommend getting together with Amit and Ron to follow this conversation. We're really interested in your opinions and ideas on how to grow and make this a community of transforming ideas into great solutions. We've got one that's just about life science, and we've got another community within that talking about agriculture. So encourage everybody to go to the AgTech gathering and the AgTech hackathons, and even participating as hackathon competitors. That's fun having done that. Also, I know Matt's having a conversation with a table to dinner, farm work to table dinner. So you're welcome to talk to Matt, one of the judges here, about some applications of this great farm community and tech community in there. Also, Another conversation you can be part of is the Aquillius YouTube channel and social media and email list. So make sure you're part of that. Also, August 21st is the next symposium, R&D and preclinical tools. Again, great speakers and the opportunity to pitch. So more pitches, more judging. And so really, thank you for coming and being part of this community and helping us grow it. Round of applause to yourselves just for being here.